In the heart of ancient Japan, authority was traditionally personified by the figure of the emperor. Revered as a direct descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu, the emperor was the spiritual head, the symbol of national unity, and the source of all legitimacy. However, for centuries, his real power was largely ceremonial. True strength, the ability to govern and impose order, was gradually shifting to powerful military clans and samurai warriors. Starting in the 10th century, the fragility of the central imperial government in Kyoto became increasingly evident. Vast landholdings, known as shun, escaped imperial control, falling into the hands of aristocratic families and powerful temples that formed their own private armies. To protect their interests and lands from bandits and rival clans, these large rural landowners began to employ and train warriors. Thus, the samurai were born, a new military class that, with their unwavering loyalty to their lords and their superior martial skills, would quickly become the dominant force in Japanese politics. These samurai clans, such as the Taira and the Minamoto, grew in power, accumulating land, wealth, and military influence. They formed their own networks of vassalage, where warriors swore allegiance to their leaders in exchange for land and protection. Although they nominally served the emperor, in practice, they were the ones who decided the country's direction, intervening in disputes at the imperial court and imposing their will by force. Japan entered a period of intense rivalry among these clans. Disputes over power and land intensified, culminating in major military conflicts that would shake the country's social and political structures. The emperor's figure, often manipulated by the stronger clans, became increasingly a distant symbol. While the reality of power was wielded by those who carried the sword, the need for a supreme military leader, capable of unifying these warring factions and imposing a lasting peace, became evident. The instability generated by internal conflicts undermined the country's prosperity and made it vulnerable. The concept of a shogun, military title meaning general who subdues barbarians, originally temporary and granted by the emperor, began to emerge as the answer to political fragmentation. The stage was set for an ambitious and capable warrior to seize the reins of power, transforming a ceremonial title into a true military head of state that would govern Japan for centuries. The era of samurai rule was about to be born from the ashes of feudal chaos. The turbulence of feudal Japan, marked by the rivalry between the Taira and Minamoto clans, reached its climax in the Genpei Wars, between 1180 and 1185. This epic conflict, which spanned 5 years, was a struggle for control of the country, and from its ashes would emerge the man who would transform the Japanese government system. Minamoto no Yoritomo, born in 1147, was the third son of Minamoto no Yoshitomo, leader of the Minamoto clan. His youth was marked by tragedy and exile. After his father's defeat in the Heiji Rebellion in 1160, against the Taira clan, Yoritomo was spared execution by the intervention of Taira no Kiyomori's mother, the victorious leader. He was exiled to Izu province, where he spent 20 years under surveillance, a period that paradoxically gave him time to mature, observe, and plan. Far from the court in Kyoto, he forged alliances and cultivated the loyalty of local warriors, preparing for the right moment to act. The call for rebellion came in 1180, when Prince Mokihito, son of Emperor Go Irakawa, issued a proclamation urging the Minamoto to rise against the Taira, who had become excessively dominant in the imperial court. Yoritomo, with his network of contacts and charisma, quickly assembled an army. The Genpei Wars were a series of bloody and strategic battles, with legendary figures like Minamoto no Yoshitsune, Yoritomo's half-brother, emerging as a brilliant military commander. The decisive victory of the Minamoto came at the Battle of Danawura in 1185. In this epic naval confrontation, the Taira fleet was annihilated, and the young Emperor Antoku, along with the sacred sword of the imperial treasure, drowned. With the defeat of the Taira, Yoritomo solidified his position as the undisputed military leader of Japan. However, Yoritomo did not seek imperial power. Instead, he established a new power center in Kamakura, a coastal city in the east of the country. Far from the influence of the aristocratic court in Kyoto, this decision was innovative and strategic. By distancing himself from the traditional capital, Yoritomo signaled that his government would be military in nature and independent of the imperial bureaucracy. In 1192, Yoritomo received the title of Seitai Shogun, general who subdues barbarians, or simply shogun, from Emperor Go-Otaba. This title, which was previously temporary and honorary, was transformed by Yoritomo into a permanent and hereditary position, with comprehensive administrative and military powers. Thus was born the Kamakura Shogunate, the first samurai government of Japan, which would last until 1333. Yoritomo's system of government, known as Bakufu tent government, was a centralized military structure. He established the Mandakoro, an administrative council, the Monshoho, a judicial court, and the Samurai Dakoro, a samurai board responsible for the discipline and command of the warriors. He appointed Shugo military governors for the provinces and Jitu land administrators for the estates, ensuring that his authority was exercised throughout the country. This network of military and administrative control allowed Yoritomo to maintain peace and order, controlling the feudal lords and ensuring the loyalty of the samurai. Despite his rise to power being marked by conflicts, Yoritomo was a cunning and ruthless leader. He eliminated rivals within his own clan, including his talented half-brother Yoshitsune, to ensure there were no challenges to his authority. His vision was of a Japan governed by a military elite, where samurai honor and discipline would be the pillars of society. He laid the foundations for a system that, with variations, would govern Japan for almost 7 centuries. The establishment of the Kamakura shogunate by Minamoto no Yoritomo was not just the victory of a clan. It was the birth of a new era, where the power of the sword supplanted the power of the imperial throne. With the precedents set by Minamoto no Yoritomo and the founding of the Kamakura shogunate, Japan entered a period of almost 7 centuries of samurai rule, an era marked by different shogun dynasties, periods of intense civil war, and moments of remarkable peace and cultural flourishing. The emperor's figure, though still divine, resided in Kyoto as a symbol, while real power was concentrated in the hands of the military leader, the Kamakura shogunate, which lasted from 1192 to 1333. The first in Japan, brought relative stability for over a century. It successfully resisted to Mongol invasion attempts in 1274 and 1281, led by Kublai Khan, divine storms, known as kamikaze, or divine winds, which destroyed the Mongol fleets, were interpreted as proof of divine protection for Japan. However, the financial cost of these defenses and the lack of land to reward the samurai after victories weakened the shogunate, leading to its eventual fall. The fall of Kamakura gave way to the turbulent Muromachi period, from 1336 to 1573, also known as the Ashikaga shogunate. This was a period of great power decentralization, with the Ashikaga shoguns often struggling to control the daimyo, the powerful regional feudal lords, the Winin War. From 1467 to 1477, a succession dispute within the shogunate itself plunged Kyoto into flames and precipitated Japan into the Sengoku period. From 1467 to 1603, the age of warring states. This was a century of almost uninterrupted civil war, with the daimyo fighting each other for dominion, testing the resilience and discipline of the samurai on an unprecedented scale. From this chaotic era emerged the 3 great unifiers of Japan. Oda Nobunaga began the unification process, using the innovative arquebus tactic and brutal military efficiency. After his assassination, his general Toyotomi Hideyoshi continued the task, unifying Japan under his command and imposing policies of disarming peasants and a strict census. However, it was Tokugawa Ieyasu, the most patient and astute of the 3, who would finally consolidate samurai power and usher in the longest era of peace in Japanese history. Ieyasu's decisive victory at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 eliminated his last rivals and paved the way for the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate, which lasted from 1603 to 1868 in Edo, the future Tokyo. This shogunate, which lasted over 250 years, is the epitome of samurai rule. Ieyasu and his successors implemented a strict system of control over the daimyo, known as Sankin Kotai, or alternate attendants, which required feudal lords to spend part of their time in Edo, holding their families as hostages, an ingenious mechanism to drain their wealth and ensure their loyalty. Under the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan entered a period of unprecedented peace and stability. The samurai class, while still being the military and administrative elite, saw their military functions diminish, and many became bureaucrats and administrators. The country adopted a policy of isolation, sakoku, closing itself almost completely to the outside world for over 2 centuries, with limited exceptions for trade with China, Korea, and the Dutch Indojima. This policy aimed to preserve social order, Japanese culture, and prevent foreign influence, especially Christianity. Despite the isolation, the Tokugawa period witnessed a remarkable cultural and economic flourishing. Cities grew, a merchant class developed, and arts like ukiyo-e kabuki and bunraku theater and popular literature prospered. Education spread, and samurai discipline, with its code of honor, Bushido, influenced society's morals and values. The Great Shogun, through an iron fist and meticulous administration, had transformed Japan from a blend of civil war into a peaceful but rigidly controlled society, establishing a legacy of order that would last for generations. The Tokugawa shogunate, which for over 2.5 centuries brought peace and stability to Japan under a centralized military regime, began to show signs of terminal weakness in the 19th century. Internally, rigid social and economic structures, imposed by the shogunal government, generated growing dissatisfaction. The samurai class, once the backbone of power, found itself in financial difficulties, without wars to legitimize its existence, while the growing merchant class accumulated wealth, challenging the established social order. Furthermore, the isolation policy, sakoku, kept Japan oblivious to Western technological and military advancements. External pressure would be the decisive blow that would expose these fragilities. In 1853, Commodore Matthew C. Perry, of the U.S. Navy, arrived in Edo Bay with his fleet of black ships, imposing and technologically superior steam vessels. The demand for opening to trade, enforced with the threat of force, shocked the Japanese nation and revealed the military vulnerability of feudal Japan in the face of Western power. The subsequent Treaty of Kanagawa in 1854 and other unequal agreements forced Japan to open its ports, generating a feeling of humiliation and a wave of intense xenophobic nationalism throughout the country. The shogunate's hesitant and, for many, weak response to the external crisis further undermined its already shaken authority. The perception that the shogunate could not protect Japan from foreign powers fueled the Sanji movement, which means revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. A coalition of powerful daimyo from the western domains, such as Satsuma, Choshu, and Tosa, who had long harbored resentment against Tokugawa rule and longed for a stronger, unified government, began to openly oppose the shogun. They advocated for the restoration of direct power to the emperor, who was seen as Japan's true and legitimate divine authority. The conflict escalated into a short civil war, the Boshin War, which lasted from 1868 to 1869. The imperial forces, which quickly modernized and equipped themselves with superior Western weaponry, faced the shogunate's troops. Although the shogunate still had loyal and well-trained samurai, they were disorganized and militarily outdated compared to the imperial forces. The decisive battle at Toba Fushimi near Kyoto, in January 1868, sealed the defeat of the shogunate's forces, clearly showing the end of an era. On November 9, 1867, in an act of great political significance to avoid a large-scale civil war and preserve the country's unity, the last shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, formally resigned from power, returning authority to the emperor. This event marked the end of over 260 years of the Tokugawa shogunate and, more broadly, of a period of almost 700 years of samurai rule in Japan. The period that followed was the Meiji Restoration, a revolutionary milestone in Japanese history. The young emperor Meiji, whose name means enlightened rule, was restored to nominal power, but real control passed to a group of reformist oligarchs from Satsuma and Choshu. They initiated a series of radical and comprehensive reforms to modernize Japan in all aspects. They abolished the feudal system, samurai rule, and sakoku. The country rapidly opened up to the world, embarking on dizzying industrialization and westernization with the slogan Fukoku Kyohei, rich country, strong army, aiming to transform Japan into a world power to resist Western colonization. The legacy of the Great Shogun and the samurai era, however, remains deeply rooted in Japanese identity and its cultural psyche. The discipline, honor, loyalty, and strict code of conduct of Bushido continue to influence the morals, ethics, and values of modern Japanese society, even if subliminally. The end of the shogunate was the closing of a chapter in Japan's political history. But the essence of the samurai spirit persisted, transforming and adapting to a new Japan on the world stage. The lessons learned under the shogunate's rule, in both peace and war, continued to shape the nation on its journey to become a global power. The story of the Great Shogun and the end of the samurai era is a testament to Japan's capacity for transformation. What factor, internal or external, do you consider most decisive for the final collapse of the Tokugawa shogunate? If you could live in any period of Japanese history, which era would you choose? That of the emperor, the shogun, or the Meiji Restoration? Share your opinion in the comments. And if there's another empire or period of great transformations that you'd love us to explore in our next video, leave your suggestion below. Your curiosity is our guide to unraveling the great stories of the world, and the next adventure begins with you.